Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out to the Center Baptist Credit and Debt Repair Workshop. We count it an honor and a privilege to come before you today and to share some very important, very relevant information that each one of us, every individual, every family should be aware of. But before we go into our presenters and our presentation, let's open up with prayer. Father, we thank you, Lord, for this opportunity. We thank you for allowing us to come together, Lord, to be able to share information, Lord. Help us to do it with a spirit of excellence, God, and help us to give information that will help people to better plan and understand the importance of planning and budgeting and state preparation, God. We thank you that you are a wonderful God. Now, Lord, we pray for those that are listening online and we pray for those that are here and on their way. Help us to say something, Lord, that will educate your people, God, that we will be good stewards of everything, all the information that you've given us. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Amen. So I thank you for allowing me. My name is Rosalind Crawford. I'm a licensed North and South Carolina real estate broker. I have hung my license with Premier South, located in the beautiful city or beautiful town of Belmont, North Carolina. We have several offices, one in Belmont, one in South Carolina as well. So we are thankful to be able to come and to share something that's near and dear to my heart, that being real estate. Every one of us need a home, a beautiful home, something that we are proud to call home, something that we're proud to invest our money in. But before purchasing a home, there's some preparation that needs to be made. So on today, I'm just going to segue into some of the presenters that are going to be coming. But in order to be ready to purchase a home, you have to first have a budget. You need to know what you can afford as a homeowner. Second, you also need to have saved anywhere from 10 to 20% for a down payment. Do your homework, do your research, search out some reputable lenders that can help you navigate through the process. So once you've done that, once you've lived and have a solid budget and you know you've saved anywhere from 10 to 20% for a down payment, then you're ready to start looking for a reputable realtor, because it's always best to have someone who's going to represent you, who's going to go out there that knows, someone who knows how to navigate through the intricacies of purchasing real estate. So it's always best to have a licensed real estate broker that's going to work on your behalf, that they have a fiduciary responsibility to represent you and to present all information to you, all material facts, all things that are pertinent in purchasing that home. So once you do that, then and you've worked with your lender, you've been pre-qualified, and as we know, there is a difference between pre-approved and pre-qualified. Pre-approved is just they've kind of glanced at your financial information and said, "Hey, yeah, we could possibly give this individual or these individuals a loan." But a pre-qualification is you've gone through underwriting. You're basically ready to go out and start looking to be able to purchase a home. So, with that being said, once that's done, you go out with a reputable realtor who's working for you and working with you. You begin to find a home. You put an offer in on that home. We're actually starting to see the market turn, and that's due to interest rates going up. People are slowing down. We're starting to see a lot of these ridiculous over asking price or over listing prices subside a little bit. We're starting to see more of the higher end home, the days on market. We're starting to see that extend quite a bit. People are a little apprehensive about purchasing big purchases like that right now because it costs more to borrow. So it's best to always, no matter what time frame, because real estate is very cyclical. It ebbs and it flows, it's up and down. So you have to understand the dynamics of the market. You want to make sure that you're watching the market, that you're aware. What are properties going for within certain, I like to look at it in quarters. What are properties going for in this quarter? First, second, third. What are the properties going for? And then from a year to year basis, you want to know, okay, so in year quarter one, houses may be going for this, or a year ago, houses were going for that. You want to be aware of market, what the prices are. But above being aware of market, again, it always goes back to being aware of what you can afford. because there's a such thing as being house poor. You get the beautiful house, but you can't afford to do anything else. So having a strong budget will help you prepare for how much house you can afford. So once you buy the house and everything's golden, you're working and you're building your beautiful home and your family and your life together, something happens. And death has no date on it. Well, it does have a date, but none of us know what that date is. So it can really throw you for a loop if you haven't made preparations of who is going to be over your information at the time of your death, or how your information is going to be distributed. It's very important to talk and sit down and have a reputable probate attorney that can walk you through that and help you understand all of the intricacies of that. But let me back up. Before I mentioned in the earlier process about budgeting. In correlation to budgeting, credit plays a part of your budget, because when you pay your bills on time, that affects your credit score. When you don't pay your bills on time, that affects your credit score. So budgeting and credit go hand in hand. We're going to talk about that as well. So with that being said, death happens and you have not made any preparation. What do? There is, you die without a will, meaning you've died intestate. You didn't have a will. Or you died testate with a will. What happens? Who does your stuff go to? We'll go back to the scenario of you die without a will. Who do your things go to? Is house, considered, is a house considered probate assets? What constitutes the assets? And who do they go to? See, these are a lot of questions that many of us don't take the time to plan out. It's all part of the planning, saving, budgeting, credit, knowing your credit scores, knowing what affects your credit scores, and estate preparation. These are the topics that we're going to deal with on today. I know I kind of did a high level overview of the process, but everything I mentioned is actually part of the process, because you don't know how much house you can buy if you don't have a budget. You need to know how much money you have coming in. You need to know how much money you have going out. You need to understand how much money you're saving. How much can you afford to save? So with that being said, our first presenter is Marche Stevenson. She's an attorney here in the state of North Carolina. Her practice is in Gastonia, the beautiful city of Gastonia. So she's going to come and talk to us about estate planning. So any questions you have, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we will have someone monitoring that chat that we can address those questions. If we can address them today, we want to be mindful of our time frame, and as well as any of the other presenters. If you have questions, please, please, please chat us out. We'll address those questions as we can. And if you have any questions for me, again, my name is Rosalind Crawford. I'm a broker, a licensed North and South Carolina broker with Premier South. Feel free to reach out to me and ask me any questions, and I'll be more than happy to help you navigate through the process, and also be more than happy to get you to the individuals who can assist you. So thank you so much for allowing me to do a high-level overview of all of our presenters on this morning. We'll start out first with Ms. Marche Stevens, then we will go with Mr. Latron Brantley, and then we'll come back with Brother Greg Stevenson. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. Again, my name is Marche Stevenson. I'm an attorney here in Gaston County. This morning's topic is the overview of estate planning in North Carolina. To get started, we can talk first about what does estate planning look like. Estate planning is a process by which an individual or family arranges transfer of their assets in anticipation of their death. And that looks like the preservation of the maximum amount of wealth possible for the intended beneficiaries, and to provide financial flexibility to the individual prior to their death. A good estate plan consists of wills, trusts, power of attorney, healthcare or medical directive, and beneficiary designation. What is a will? Will is your instruction to the people you leave behind what's to be done with your money and your property after you die. There are 3 types of wills in North Carolina. The one is holographic will. That's a will that is written in a testator's or the person who's making the wills, handwriting and scribed or signed, written or signed by the testator and found amongst that person's important papers. No witnesses are needed to verify the validity of that will. A non-cooperative will is an oral will. It's made during the last illness of the person. They're in the hospital or they're on their deathbed, and they know that this is their last opportunity to tell people what they want done with their assets. And it requires 2 witnesses to be there specifically for that purpose. It can't be related witnesses, and they hear what the testator has said, and during that illness or injury, final, and then the testator has to die as a result of that last illness or injury. A self-proven will is what you go to an attorney to have done normally. You can do it yourself. A written will that meets the requirements of North Carolina Statute, Chapter 31, it requires 2 witnesses and it requires a notary. The idea of self-proven is that everything in that document is valid. Then there's a trust as well. A trust is in either augments a will or it supplement, or it takes is instead of a will. It's an arrangement whereby a person who's a trustee holds property that is a nominal owner for the good of one or more beneficiaries, and sometimes that includes the person who the property belongs to. The purpose of the trust is to promote stewardship, preserve access beyond one generation, avoid taxes, if you have a state that's large enough, asset protection from when you have to go into a nursing home at the end of your life. It protects your property from Social Security and having to do the spin down, and it cares for children with special needs after your death. These are the certain types of trusts. It's not all inclusive, but those are the common types: inter vivos or grantor's trust, the testamentary trust, special needs trust, and revocable trust. A power of attorney is also needed. Why, you say? Because at some points, somewhere along the way, you may not be too ill to take care of your own business. So you have to have someone that you believe and trust to take care of and make decisions on your behalf. So the 2 types of power of attorney is a general power of attorney, where you give the agent all power that you yourself hold over your business and your interests. A special power of attorney limits the agent's power to a specific act. Be aware, though, that the agent has fiduciary duty to act in good faith on your behalf, and you remain responsible for any action that the agent takes in regards to your business and in transaction with other people, your business. And the power of attorney expires by a date that you set in that document or upon your death. Now, power of attorneys are not accepted at all banks and businesses and medical facilities. So it is important that you should complete the form that the institution has so that you can avoid problems when a power of attorney is needed. And this is especially important when the principal or you become incapacitated or incompetent even. Now, let me slow down with my slides right now, but let's just talk a little bit. One of the things that has been coming up over and over when people approach me about making wills is the fact that the person whose will I'm making, there's some issue with their memory and their competency. Well, as an attorney, I have to be conscious of that. And I have to slow down and say, how can we prove that this person is competent? There are certain steps as an attorney I have to do, and one of those is either get them declared to be incompetent in court, or to get a doctor's note and actually meet with that person. I can't do it outside of meeting that person and making a determination of whether or not they do indeed have all their faculties in operation. Going forward with the slides. Okay. One of the things I've been asked to say. I'd like to hold it anyway. Okay. All right. Before I go to the next slide, people have different relationships in their lives. In North Carolina, there is no such thing as common law marriage. So if you're in a relationship and you're not married to your significant other, when that person passes away, if your name is not on their assets as a joint owner, then you may have difficulty transacting business on behalf of their estate, because that's what it's called, an estate. So be aware of that. Now, if you have a common law marriage that was validated by another state and you come into North Carolina, then North Carolina has to honor that common law relationship. But absent that, if you're trying to say that you were in a common law relationship that was established in North Carolina, that's not a legal relationship, so it won't be recognized. Okay, moving on. Healthcare. Thank you. Healthcare or medical directive is another part of estate planning. It's often called a living will or durable power attorney. It's a written statement of what you want done with you when you get incapacitated or you're incompetent. Be aware of who you are designating as the person to make those decisions over you. There are different aspects of a healthcare power attorney, so talk to whoever your legal representative will be when you're making your estate plan. Other terms to know, I hope it's legible, are things like persterpes. I'm gonna be skipping around. Persterpes means that you have children and one of them predeceased you before you die, and they have children, and those children becomes heir with your other children. Let's say you have three, one dies, two are your direct lineage, and then two is a generation away, then all of those will inherit your property on an equal basis. The next term is survivorship. Joint tenure with survivorship means that you and somebody else owns property, and you have agreed that if one of you die first, the other person has a right to the entire property as a result of your death. Real estate, of course, is land or buildings on that land. And it could also include an interest in real estate, where you have some interest in that property, what happens to that property, like a life tenant. Then you have personal property that includes not only jewelry, automobile, bank accounts. It also includes interest in investments, as well as things like I'm trying to think of the word, and I apologize for that. But it's like it's like your creativity, things that you have created, artwork, poetry, those kind of things. That's part of personal property. A beneficiary is a person that you have designated with different institutions like annuities, life insurance, to take what you have, and banks, to take ownership of what the things that you have given to them by way of that document or that relationship. We can go to the other slide, to the next slide. Okay, who should make a will or a trust or establish a trust? The person has to be over the age of 18. That means you can be 18 in 2 days. A person who is competent, which means they have a sound mind, they know what they own, they know they're making a will or establishing a trust, and they're not under duress or threat of harm. Beneficiaries, as I said, are entitled to receive what you have put aside in annuity, insurance policy, and that type of thing. But these are the type of personal property and real estate as well that can pass to a beneficiary without going through your will. When you're doing a will, if you are making a bequest to someone and that bequest fails because the person refuses to accept it, or they predecease you, then that becomes part of what's called residual estate. Sometimes residual estate will pass outside of the will because you have not designated a person to receive your residual estate, which means it goes as if you died without a will. And then your heirs in line of succession, which means who was born directly as your children, or your husband or your wife, sisters or brothers, or granddaughters, nieces, anyone that's in your lineage will be entitled to receive outside the will your residual estate. Next slide. Review your beneficiary designation when you become aware that change is needed. That's when the person predeceases you, or your relationship changes, or you decide to do something different with that insurance policy or that annuity, or at least every 3 to 4 years, because sometimes our memory set tells us things that aren't so. We've forgotten. When it's fresh, we can remember easily, but as time goes on, we tend to forget who was it that we designated as the beneficiary for that particular asset. Next slide. Also, you need to review your will, your power of attorney, and other estate documents as they become as you become aware of the change, or at least every 3 to 5 years as well. Again, for the same reasoning. Next slide. Be mindful. Certain retirement pension plans do not continue beyond the life of the owner spouse. Some government pensions offer survivor benefit plans, which is worth the cost, and it's not very much money that you have to pay, for your non-owner spouse to continue to receive that benefit, because that will affect their income after you're gone. And we do want our spouse not to have to lose the house behind not having enough money to make it, especially in our older age. Know your coverage. Life insurance companies sometimes reduce coverage for people over the age of 60. So a term life plan amount through an employer may be less than the original face value at the time that you're 60 than when you were 35. Veteran compensation benefits will not continue after the death of the veteran. The spouse and or dependent children must apply for dependent indemnity compensation to receive further benefits, but only if the veteran dies from a service-connected disability. Be aware that the amount may not be as much as the veteran was receiving when they were alive, but it is at least $1,000 a month. Retirement plans and pensions do not continue belong to the life of the owner spouse. Some government, we went backwards. One more. Oh, it's there twice. Okay, burial. Wherever possible, include pre-burial plans in your estate plan. It provides the grieving heirs with some relief when making the final plans for you. Veteran Cemetery Administration benefits are available for veterans and their spouses who qualify. This may reduce the cost of a burial. Your estate plan is completed. Now what? Don't make it a treasure hunt. Don't make people have to look and find and wonder and try to chase down people to say, did you know what Charlie did with his will, or did he even have a will? Put in your documents in a safe and secure place, like a safe or safety deposit box. Tell somebody where it is, where to find them. And it could be anyone, your executor, your children. You don't have to tell them what's in it, but you need to tell them that it exists. So thank you for your time and attention. Oh, questions?
Questions. All
Yes.
right.
Okay.
So a person passes away. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. By the way, I want to thank you so much for that. But a question that comes to mind is a person passes away and they have money in the bank. What should have been done prior to that to make sure that the person has access to the money?
Well, again, a power of attorney works, but you also have an opportunity when you're establishing an account, or you can go into the bank and set up a beneficiary for that account. And that way, the beneficiary can then go, after they show proof of your death, that they are entitled to it, or you can put their name on as a joint owner to the account. That's all according to how you feel comfortable.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question, follow up to that, is what happened if that wasn't done? There's no will, there's no beneficiary on the account.
Well, there's a process in North Carolina and most states where you apply to the clerk of court to become an administrator of the estate for that individual. You have to make an accounting for everything that you put your fingers on concerning that estate and the assets of that estate. But you can be appointed if you qualify. But you have to make sure that you're amongst the people who can qualify. Be certain that when you are looking to become administrator, that you are mindful of all aspects of that estate, because then when you become administrator, you're responsible for everything, not just that one bank account that you have your eye on, but everything. And the money that's in that account doesn't belong to you, even as administrator. It belongs to the estate. So it's there for the debts of the estate and for the heirs of the estate. And non-relatives can be appointed administrators. So be mindful of that. Creditors who you owe money to can become administrator of the estate, but you want to be, I say, cognizant of the fact that as the person who owns the assets, You want to be mindful of the fact that they may not have the best interest of your heirs in mind if they're appointed as the administrator of your estate. So that's why a will is the better vehicle to disperse your assets. Any more questions?
I have one question, Marche, and it kind of goes in line with the question that Pastor asked. So the monies are in the checking account. You are not named beneficiary. You're not named executor or administrator. So you have to go through the courts.
And you don't have a power of attorney. Well,
Right.
the power of attorney has expired because the person
Right,
has
'cause the
died.
person's dead. So you have to go through the courts. Once the court appoints an administrator or executor,
It's going to be administrator.
okay, an administrator. So once the court appoints an administrator, that money that was in the normal checking account would then have to be moved to an estate account. Would they have to open an estate account?
That you have to check with the clerk.
Okay.
My understanding is that you don't. You can operate from that account. You just have to track it and document what it was spent on. Because you have to do an accounting of all the person's assets, including their furniture, the car, what mortgage they owe, everything. So that's, but you don't have to move it from one account to another. You can continue to operate out of that account, just making sure that you have receipts and document, because you have to report back to the clerk of court what you did with what you had access to. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering if you have debt at the time of your death, how does your debts get paid? Do you just simply call a credit card company and say the person has passed away and the debt goes away? How do they get paid?
That's up to the credit card company, pretty much. There are priorities in what debt has to be paid. The last illness payment for care for the last illness, burial expenses. But then creditors could, if we're talking about outside the will, okay, like there's no will, you're administrator. As administrator, you have to announce the person's death for at least 2 weeks in the paper. And all creditors are invited to come forth to make a claim. And then you have to honor those claims according to what assets are in the estate. And if you find that there are not adequate assets to cover everything, you can write letters to those creditors who have come forth and make them aware that there is nothing there that they can receive, and ask them to, I guess, forgive the debt. And most of them will. If you're going through the will, again, if there's not enough assets, you still have that same right or responsibility to handle those debts, either with a payment or with a letter asking them to forgive the debt. But you're not required, if there's nothing in that estate, you're not required to go into your purse or to pay that debt. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
So as a follow-up to that question, if you have a will and you will someone, say like your house, but you still owe on your house, and that person's not able to pay for it, then what happens?
The decision would be, well, if you're the executor and the house is not willed to you, okay, the mortgage follows the property for sure, okay? So if the heir to that house cannot pay for the house, then it's going to be lost one way or the other. Either they surrender it to the mortgage company and get whatever is that's owed on the mortgage, or they sell it outright, or they can even rent it and continue to pay the mortgage. But those are all options that they will have to set up with the mortgage company.
Okay. And say they did sell it, and maybe the person had been in the house so long that maybe the person had equity in the house. Would the person the house was willed to get that equity, or would it go towards, I mean, because it would be fair, right, for them to get the equity?
They get the equity in the sense that if they're selling it for a price.
Right.
And the price, the net sell is what's over what's owed.
Right.
Okay, so they'll get what's over it, what's
Okay.
owed. They get
Okay.
the net equity in the home.
Okay. So they would just have to make sure that they had representation to help them understand what was going on so that nobody would shortchange them in the end.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could kind of chime in on that, the key word you said is representation, because many people come to a point in life where they're facing something that they've never faced before, and they know nothing about it. And I got an old adage that I always say, if you don't know, ask somebody. And when you ask somebody that know. A lot of people go and ask so-and-so and so-and-so because they're pretty smart and they may own their own business or this or that, but they don't know about this. And you need someone that has expertise in this area.
And just to chime in to kind of piggyback from a real estate perspective to answer your question, if there is a house that has to be sold where there's equity built up in the house, if there's a house to be sold, when you sell that house, it's always best to get a reputable real estate agent that can run the comps on that house and tell you what the market value is and what's going on in the surrounding area, what houses have sold within the past 180 days, what they sold for. They should be able to do what's called a comparable market analysis to be able to price your house just right so that you do sell it. And in the event that there's equity and the house still has a mortgage, you pay off that mortgage, whatever's left. If there are no medical bills or whatever that need to be taken care of, I don't know how that comes into play if you would have to. So whatever's left is yours. You sell that house, you list it for $300, and it's only got a $100,000 balance on it. You pocket the $200. Okay.
Any more questions? If not, I turn it back to Lazy Rogers.
Let's give Marche a hand. Again, if you have any questions, those of you who are here, please feel free to get with Marche. She is an attorney here in Gastonia, but licensed in the state of North Carolina. So she will be an excellent resource for any questions that you have as it pertains to estate planning. So were there any questions on the chat? I just want to make sure before we move on. Okay, so our next presenter is going to be Mr. Latron Brantley. Latron's going to talk to us about credit and debt. So any questions you have, we'll let him get through his presentation, and then we'll open the floor up for questions. Okay, at this time, Mr. Latron Brantley.
Hey, good morning, everyone. All right, so today we're going to talk about something that affects a lot of our lives, and that's credit. A lot of people don't, understand the true impact of credit and how it affects us. I mean, it can affect our home purchase. It can affect, for whether or not we get a job. It can many times affect whether or not we get insurance, get an apartment. That credit score means a lot. And even in situations where, we're looking to get out of debt, there's a smart way to get out of debt. And We'll have Mr. Greg Stevenson is going to be giving us a presentation on budgeting. But even when you get out of debt, some people say, make sure you pay off, get rid of all your credit cards. But if you do that, and that, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But it's just understanding getting rid of your credit cards will affect your credit score. So today we're just going to talk about what a credit score is and the different factors that affect your credit score. So if you see on the side, basically credit score is this number between 300 and 850 that depicts a consumer's credit worthiness. The higher the score, the better a borrower is looked at as far as potential and low risk for whoever the lender is, whether it be a mortgage company, whether it be a business loan, lender, or what have you. Next slide. So what we do, we want to talk about the different factors that affect your credit score. And a lot of people, this seems to be confusing to a lot of people. A lot of people don't understand this, but basically there are 5 things that affect your credit score. Anybody, well, you can see from the screen, but the number 1 factor is what? Payment history, right? And that's how well you pay your bills on time. How many people have some sort of system or app to monitor your credit? What do you guys use? Credit Karma. Some people use My FICO, Identity IQ. But these are systems that allow you to monitor your credit. And one of the factors is going to be how well you've paid your bills on time or payment history. The higher that percentage, the more of your FICO score you're going to get. And this relates, in this particular case, primarily to the FICO score. We'll talk about FICO in a minute. But 35% of your FICO score is made up of your payment history. The next big piece, and obviously the largest piece is your payment history, but the next largest is your level of debt, right? So level of debt is primarily referring to revolving credit, AKA what? Credit cards, right? So any type of revolving cards, that 30%, and then sometimes this is where it gets confusing. In order for you to get all of that 30% of your FICO score for revolving credit or level of debt, you have to have a credit utilization of, let's say, I would say below 5%, 5 to 0%, meaning if you have a $10,000 credit card, if I wanted to get all of that 30% of my FICO score for revolving credit, I need to have a zero balance or a 2% to 5% or zero balance on that $10,000 card, right? So that means I'm basically, if I want to carry a balance, that balance would be $9,995 into the net statement cycle in order to get the majority of the full of that 30%. So if I'm paying my bills on time and I'm also below 5% on my credit cards, I'll get that full 30%. So right now I'm at 65% of my FICO score. All right, so the next biggest piece is your age of credit. And the age of credit basically means, especially if you had, let's say, a mortgage or a credit card that you've had for years, the longer that you had open lines of credit, the better it shows that you were able to manage your credit for a longer period of time. And you can get the majority of that 15%. If you're brand new to credit, which, some people are, especially students, they're brand new to credit, they will probably not get, most likely, the majority of that 15%. But a little trick that not a lot of people know is if you do have, young adults, especially if they're going off to college and they don't have established credit, one of the things that you can do as a parent, only if you have good credit, you don't want to do this if you don't have good credit, but if you have good credit, and you have a good age and history on your credit, for your credit cards, you can put your children on as an authorized user. And that would give them access to all of your history. So let's say if you had a credit card for 10 years, $20,000, you make them an authorized user, that would give them, in essence, that same history on their credit report. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to give them the card, right? You can keep the card, but they'll get the benefit of that history. So that is just something to keep in mind, because a lot of people don't know that. It's called an authorized user. And many banks and you know, obviously when they're running their own analysis on someone's credit, they know you know, what authorized users are, and they can definitely pick that out. But if they know that this is a young borrower just getting started out, that could be a factor in helping them get a lot further in their pursuit of credit. All right, the next big piece, or small, well, step back to the same slide. So the next piece is that 10%. That's just basically types of credit. And what do we mean by types of credit? Anyone? Revolving, home mortgage, automobile. Well, usually mortgage and automobile, those are called installment loans. But revolving credit, you know, installment loans, you know, things of that sort. What's the different types of credit, you know, that you do have? And so that goes into that 10%. So if you have a good mix of credit, which, you know, usually most people, they have no problem getting a good mix of credit, you can get that full 10%. And then the very last are inquiries. And inquiries on your credit, and these are hard inquiries. This is where you give somebody your social security number and they do what's considered a hard pull on your credit. And that can affect your credit score. Now, it's only makes up 10% of your FICO score, but it could be in some cases where that 10% could affect your ability to get a loan, especially if lenders, they don't only look at how many inquiries that you have, because you do lose points every time someone does a hard pull. But they also look at, okay, if you've been, you know, looking for credit and you have this many hard pulls, you know, you're out, you know, we don't know if you're out, you know, trying to get as much debt as you can, and, you know, you may be more of a risk. Now, with that said, many banks, mortgage companies, they know, you know, if you're shopping for a loan, right, you can shop within a 45-day period and have multiple pulls on your credit report. But based on the calculation of your score, it won't affect your score. It'll just count as one. But a lot of people get confused. Those inquiries still will show on your credit report, right? It's just that all those inquiries, let's say if you had 15 inquiries shopping for a mortgage, they will still show on your credit report. But when figuring up your calculation for your score, they'll only count as one if it's in a 45-day period, because it's understood that when you're shopping for a mortgage or shopping for auto financing, you will, you know, have to have multiple pulls in order to try to get a good rate. You have a lot of companies now that are doing soft pulls to kind of see, you know, where you are, and that's good, but that's only going to get you so far. They're still going to do some looking in, and it's more different. It's easier with, I think, auto financing, but with mortgages, you know, they may do a soft pull, and if they get you pre-qualified with a soft pull, credit card companies do this too. As long as you don't, you know, go out and do any purchases of anything else and whatnot, there's a great chance that you will, through a hard pull, still get approved. But you have some people out there that, you know, get pre-approved or pre-qualified, you know, via soft pull, or even a hard pull pre-qualified, and they'll go out, buy a new car. You know, some of y'all probably seen it before. Buy a new car because they had to have it when they pull up into the driveway of their new house, and didn't think about the fact that the loan hadn't closed yet, or they hadn't closed on the property. And so that would definitely affect them. So I wanted to, you know, I took my time deliberately to go through this because I went through this. I was telling someone this morning, I went through this with my 9-year-old. My 9-year-old can recite every factor that affects your FICO score, but some adults can't do that. So it's very important for us to understand how what we do and how we approach credit affects that number. All right, next slide. All right, so just talking about consumer credit, some people call it personal credit. Basically, there's one primary score that's used, and that's the FICO, and that basically stands for Fair Isaac Corporation. It was developed by two gentlemen in, was it 1956, for determining credit worthiness, and that was basically initially around the grocery business, being able to offer credit for folks for groceries, but it then expanded after they built a large database. And then there's different levels of FICO. So you may, I'm sure a lot of you probably wonder, how come, when I pull up my credit, or when Bank of America pulls my credit, it's this number. When I pull it up on my FICO, it's this number. When I pull it up on Credit Karma, it's this number. Anybody ever wondered that? The difference is the algorithms that's being used. When I mean algorithms, it's basically the set of rules and instructions for evaluating your credit profile, right? So any bank or lending institution, they may have different algorithms. Now, FICO in itself, I think now at this point has about 9 or 10 algorithms. I think the latest one that's out now that a lot of lenders are adopting is called FICO 10, which looks at the 10, I think it's called FICO 10T. It's FICO 10 and FICO 10T. The T stands where it actually looks at 24 months of history back. I think the most popular now is FICO 8 and FICO 9. Those are the most popular algorithms that companies are using, but many of them are starting to adopt the later algorithms. Some of the car industry, they utilize like FICO 4, FICO 5, and the difference is how those algorithms evaluate your credit history. Many of those individuals, just as a piece of knowledge, understand that there's a big issue with medical debt on your credit report. Well, medical debt, I think as of July of this year, any medical debt that has been paid off, that it has to be removed from your credit report, obviously, because sometimes that stuff sticks around. I think starting next year, any medical debt below a certain amount, regardless of whether or not it's been paid off, has to be removed. So that's something that could be disputed. So a lot of these companies will automatically drop them off, such as Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. So that's just something to keep in mind. So we talk about FICO, but then there's another one, the Vantage algorithm. Vantage is used by a few companies. It's not as popular as FICO, but what's one application that we use that primarily uses the Vantage score? Anybody know? Credit Karma. So when you look at Credit Karma and you say, my credit score is this, you go to apply for a loan and they tell you, no. So you see my credit score is a 700 on Credit Karma, but you go to apply for a loan for a house and they say, oh, no, your credit score is a 610. And you're like, what? Why is that? That's because Credit Karma uses the Vantage score, which evaluates you different than what the bank is using, which is probably FICO 8 algorithm. So it's important to know when you're looking at Credit Karma, and the score that you get may not reflect the score that a lender would pull on you. So it's better to, instead of focusing so much on, one app and trying to, satisfy one app algorithm, just try to focus on those 5 factors, paying your bills on time, the amount of utilization of your credit cards, the age of your credit. So I mean, if you have a credit card that you've owned for 10 years, the worst thing you can do is close it out, especially if you've been paying on it. Best thing you can do is pay it down. And then of course your credit mix, and then your inquiries, making sure you get your inquiries down. And so also you should also monitor your credit. Most of these apps, you can actually pull your credit, and you can get annual credit report. You can go to annualcreditreport.com, get a credit report, and then view everything on your credit. Next slide. And this just kind of shows you, I mean, and I don't even know why I put this slide up here because it's different in different places, different algorithms, but just kind of gives you a general range of what's excellent, what's good, what's considered fair and poor, but those numbers fluctuate. So next slide. All right, so again, a lot of this stuff you guys already know. So hopefully as I'm talking about this, I can hit some information that people don't know, because not everybody knows this, but then there are hopefully some nuggets I can give you that you do know. Well, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, those are the primary credit bureaus. There is talk, and I'm sure you guys probably heard about this, where the Biden administration, and you can look this up yourself, it's out there, is looking to get rid of the commercial credit reporting agencies, right? Because there's been a lot of corruption, security breaches, and whatnot. Anybody ever heard of the Equifax security breach? So what Biden administration is looking to do is to get rid of the consumer credit reporting agencies and bring everything in-house with this CFPB, which is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. And a lot of people don't know, if you're trying to dispute something on your credit report, you can go to the CFPB website now and dispute something, and they take disputes from the CFPB a whole lot more serious than if you were to do a direct dispute on their website. So if you're going on to the CFPB, these credit bureaus have to respond and do something about it. So just keep that in mind. Right now, we still have Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, but there could be a time in the future where these will go away, and then the credit reporting score will be done by the CFPB. And you want to make sure at this point now, you want to get your credit straight, because it would be much less manipulative when it transfers over to the CFPB. So whatever your score is at that point, when it goes to CFPB, that's going to be what it is, and it'll be a lot harder to change. So just something to keep in mind. So that's why a lot of people, one of the reasons people are going through credit repair now is so that they can do whatever they can to fix their credit and get it to a point so that whenever that change happens, they'll be in a better position. Next slide. All right, so key activities you need to do for your credit. You need to review, dispute, and then verify. This is something you can do on your own. There are companies out there that can do it for you. And I've been speaking with a lot of them lately. I ended up partnering with one, as I'm doing my business for lending to startup businesses as well as existing businesses where the owner's credit isn't quite there and they just need to get it to that next level. But there's a lot of companies out there that are scammers, but then there's some that are doing great work, and I've seen it with my own eyes. And so this is something that you can actually go on if as long as you have the time to go in and dispute the various things on your credit report. But if it's something that you need assistance, you can come see me, and I can see that if we can get you helped out to evaluate and fix some of the things on your credit. Next slide. All right, so one of the things I just wanted to bring up is the fact that beside Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, there are some hidden agencies. You ever wonder when you apply for a job and they do a background check on you, How do they find out about that time you were busted shoplifting some now-laters from the corner convenience store? You ever figure that out? That doesn't show up on any of your credit reports or whatever, but it does show up on that top one right there. Basically, the LexisNexis is pretty much anything you've done from your young adult life to now is captured. Every parking ticket that you've gotten, every loan that you've gotten, regardless of whether you paid it off or not, anything that you've done, whether you got your fishing license 30 years ago, anything that you've done where you had to get a license, your real estate license, your mortgage broker license, all that stuff is kept in LexisNexis. And then just like LexisNexis, there are others that are out there that keep similar information like Sage Stream, Innovis, ARS, Check Systems. There's CoreLogic, which keeps all that. When you go into Zillow and you see all this property information, about these properties, and you figure out, how did they get all this stuff? Well, more than likely it comes from CoreLogic, because they gather all this information from the counties across the United States for every property that is registered in the United States. And so that's how they also know whether or not you own property. And of course, Medical Information Bureau, which keeps information about medical records. So these are hidden agencies out there that a lot of people don't know about. And when you're going through the dispute process, then this is one of those pieces of nuggets. If you're deciding to do your own credit repair, which you definitely can do, it just takes time, but you can do it. It's the advice that I give people is to go through to each one of these and freeze these credit reports, because that can help you when it comes to verifying. Now you can, work, it's legal, you can do it. This is your information. You have the right to freeze it. Whether you do it or not, it's up to you. But companies, when they're verifying certain things, they'll go back to these reports and pull you up to verify. And when they're verifying, if they have a challenge getting to this information, is that your problem? Just putting it out there. So moving on, catch it if you can. Okay, so you can go back. Well, actually, stay at this slide. So we're just kind of rounding up, closing out. So again, mortgage lenders, car, auto dealers, they're looking at your credit through different lenses. And just like I mentioned, there are different algorithms, and I'm using these big words, but this is what they are. You have to know these terms and understand them. Even though that there's these different algorithms that Vantage and FICO uses, you have to understand that each dealership or each lender uses their own system. So they may pull your credit and evaluate it and then decide, whether or not you pass or fail or get approved or denied based on other information that they saw. So just something to keep in mind. The best way is to do what you can in order to prove your score, pay your bills on time, be able to lower your revolving credit utilization, make sure you have a good mix of credit, the age of credit is good. And then if you freeze your credit reports, your TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, that will get rid of inquiries. I've had my credit now frozen, which means I've not applied for any new debt for at least 18 months now. So, and I've been in situations where I thought somebody, I gave somebody my information, not thinking, and they tried to run my credit, and I got a notification that was blocked by Experian. So I'm like, yes. So it does work if you want to minimize, people accessing your credit. And also it helps prevent identity theft, too. But I have not only my Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, but all those hidden agencies, I have those frozen too. And so if you need a list of those, I can send you those if you see me. Also, I've partnered with a company in my business. I'm a business loan broker, so I offer business loans in lines of credit for businesses, whether you're a startup or existing business. But if you don't qualify for whatever reason, then I partnered with a great company that's been helping a lot of people. And so if you need help with your credit, just let me know. But John Brantley, this is just an education in credit. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And next, we're going to have Mr. Greg Stevenson talking about, oh, I'm sorry, we have questions. You're not going to let me get off that easy.
That's right.
All right.
So, wonderful presentation. I want to thank you for that. Want to just touch bases once again on the difference between soft pull credit and hard pull credit and how it affects your credit score.
Yeah, that's great. Great question. Just like as I touched on, so anytime you are giving your social security number to anyone or you're on an online application, if it's asking for your social security number, it's safe to assume that they're going to do a hard inquiry on your credit report, meaning it's going to be an inquiry that's going to be registered. They're going to pull your official credit report from their credit reporting agencies, and they may not pull all three, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. They may just pull one because a lot of people don't know that the bureaus are kind of region based. So a lot of people in this like Eastern United States, be Equifax, TransUnion is kind of like the Midwest, and then Experian is kind of like the West. But there are some that will pull depending on where the lending institution is located. So if they're located in California, they may do an Experian pull. If you're financing with somebody on the East Coast, they may do an Equifax pull. So that's a hard pull if they're looking for your social security number. Now, there's a soft pull thing called a soft pull. If they don't ask for your social security number and they're asking you for your birth date, your address, any other little identifying information other than your social security number, what they're going to do is they're going to run a search against the database, or probably like something like LexisNexis or some of the bureaus, but not do an official pull. That's a soft pull that will not affect your credit. A hard pull will affect your credit, can drop you down a few points, not significant, but those few points could mean a lot when you're teetering between fair and good credit, right? So just to keep in mind, soft pull does not affect your credit. Hard pull does affect your credit and could drop your score.
Follow-up question on that. So if it does, say if it takes it down 3 points, how do you recoup those 3 points, just for an example?
You can, there's ways that you can use. There's, and I'll call them tactics that people use. If you feel deep in your heart, if you got a hard pull on your credit and you feel deep in your heart that pull was not legitimate, meaning you thought you were getting a soft pull and it was a hard pull, you can dispute that and they can be removed. You can dispute that directly with the credit bureaus. They can be removed. Just also, as I mentioned, you can dispute with the CFPB, which is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, and they can have them removed. A lot of people have a lot of great success removing inquiries from their credit report, but just be warned, if you do a dispute and you actually got the loan, right? If you try to dispute an inquiry where you got the loan, obviously you're not going to get that removed. And I'll tell you this, if you have a credit card that you receive, let's say you received a $20,000 credit card from, Chase, right? And then you dispute the inquiry that they had to get your profile and approve you, you dispute that, they're going to close your card. So just keep that in mind.
One last question on that credit card piece, which was, it was something there. Oh, you were talking about, another time you were talking about 2 different dates on your billing.
Oh yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So when you're making credit card payments, your credit card, your score for your utilization can change on a monthly basis, right? And so one of the things you need to keep in mind is that when you're making payments on your credit cards, there's 2 dates. There's the payment date, which is the payment due date, which is when your payment is due, right? And it's best to pay that, payment at the due date. But typically, you'll find, and if you look at your credit card statement, you'll see this. There's a payment due date, and typically 2 to 3 or 4 days later, there's what's called a statement date. And that statement date is when those lenders send their report to the credit bureaus, right? And so whatever your payment status is at that point, if you don't make your payment by that statement date, they could report your payment not technically as late, like 30 days late. That's a different thing, but it could affect your utilization, right? So if you, let's say your payment is due on the 15th and you maxed out your card, right? $20,000 card, you max it out 20,000, right? You got your bonus from work and your statement date is the 18th and you pay that card. You don't pay it on the 15th, but you pay it on, let's say, the 16th or the 17th. And as long as it's paid by that date before the statement goes out to the bureaus, you will be 0% utilization. Does that make sense? So if my payment was due on the 15th and my statement date, meaning the date that they send to the credit bureaus, is the 18th, if I pay that $20,000 off on the 17th and it is posted in the system, when they report on the 18th, it's going to report me as 0% utilization. Now, if I make that payment on the 18th, chances are it's going to get posted and it's going to show me maxed out on my credit card, even though I paid that $20,000 on the 18th. That makes sense? So those are two dates that confuse a lot of people because they're like, how do they report me max utilization, but I paid everything off on the 20th? Well, it's because your statement date was on the 18th, and that's when they report it to the credit bureaus. So just something to think about. Now, you can bounce back from it. You just have to suffer a lower credit score till the next month when it reports correctly. But just keep in mind, if you're monitoring your credit every month, just knowing what affects your credit and why it fluctuates. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I totally forgot that. Yes.
What effect does paying ahead on your credit, paying extra to the principal, what does that have on if you end up paying off?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like on an installment loan, right?
Yes.
So if you pay extra on your principal, you have the ability to, you could potentially pay off your debt a lot sooner, but also you could lower the amount of interest that you're paying if you're paying additional toward your principal.
Will it affect your credit?
Well, it depends. If you're paying down to the point where you've paid it off and that line of credit or installment loan drops from your credit report, it could affect your credit because it takes away from your mix and it also takes away from your installment loan count.
Okay, so we talking positive effect or negative effect?
It could be a negative effect, but it's one of those things where, obviously you want to get to the point to where you're paying off installment, debt. Now, different companies, remember, have different ways of evaluating your credit. So let's say if you have a mortgage, right, and you're looking to get another mortgage, the balance on that mortgage, paying down, that mortgage, showing that activity of paying it down could help you in a sense if you have another company that's looking to lend you, extend you credit for a mortgage. But if in the situation where the only thing you have is a mortgage, an installment mortgage loan, you don't have a car payment or anything like that, and you pay it off and it falls from your credit report, that takes away from your mix and could negatively impact you. That makes sense? Yeah. But different companies have different ways of evaluating your credit.
My question is, you mentioned about you can freeze your accounts. And I did that, and I think Experience only freezes for 1 year. Is that any type of negative event? Do you
No,
have to
I've-
go in there and unfreeze it?
Well, yeah, you'd have to freeze it, whenever you need to use your credit. Mine's been frozen. I hadn't even touched mine. When I hit freeze, that was 18 months ago, and it's still frozen right now on Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And it's so easy. I mean, you just go online and you sign up for an account, and you can do it. And you can freeze your credit with just a touch of a button. But yes, good question. Any more questions? And like I said, if you're needing help with credit, just let me know. I'm all about giving away free information. But if you need additional help, just let me know, and I can see what we can do to get you straightened out. But without further ado, we have a great topic coming up about budgeting. That's something that I struggle with myself. I got my little spreadsheets and everything, but hopefully we got Mr. Greg Stevenson is going to give us some additional insight on how to budget for success in our personal finances.
Good morning. Before we get into the actual presentation, I'm going to cover a couple background notes. I retired at the age of 37. And first I want to make sure I recognize how that took place because it was, number one, due to the grace of God and His mercy. That's number one. And also it had to do with friends, my wife, co-workers. It's a lot of people that you have to give a tremendous lot of credit for if you're able to accomplish something like that. I'm from a family of 9, including my mother. After high school, I went straight directly into my first job. And I ran into a friend. Now we're going to get to the credit part, and this is still introduction. I ran into a friend that said, if you want to establish credit, then you need to apply for credit cards. And that was the only part I heard, and that was the only part I knew. So to make a long story short, I acquired a number of credit cards. Exxon, Sunoco, Sears, Montgomery Wards, you just keep on going down the list. And I want you to keep in mind that I said I was 18 years old. I'm collecting all these credit cards without the appropriate information and to include budgeting. Then I opened up a checking account. I had no clue about a checking account. After about 6 months opening up that checking account, I was bouncing checks all over the nation. The mistake that I was making that I was not aware of is that when you are balancing a checkbook, you have to count the outstanding checks, and I wasn't aware of that. So I was doing my checkbook, and I was like, the bank keeps on saying I have this money, so obviously I have to have this money. And so finally I got called, and it wasn't as bad as it is now, where they almost, well, that's a felony now almost, plus the fees that they charge for bounce checks now is ridiculous. But during that time, all they did was say, sir, you need to get it together. So to make a long story short, I went to the bank, and the lady set me down, and she said, let me see your checkbook. And to make a long story short, she said, stop writing checks, period. She said, wait until all your checks clear and then come back to the bank and I'll help you out. And it gets a little bit better. I want you to keep in mind at this time I wasn't married, so my wife wasn't responsible for none of that. Then I had the nerve to apply for a consolidated loan because out of all those credit cards I had, I was paying the minimum balance. Then what happened is I started borrowing money from people. I was borrowing money so fast, I would say, LaTron, can you let me have 20 and I'll pay you back on Thursday? And I paid on time. I would say, Pastor, can you let me hold 30 until Saturday? And so I was doing a loop. That's how bad my finances were messed up. So I think you get the point. Next slide, please. If you keep in mind that these are only the 3 major terms that you have to know concerning a budget. It's easy to understand the terms. They are basically self-explanatory, but it is a humongous task to have the behavior and the discipline that it takes to follow these 3 steps. One is the income, your expenses, and net income. It's real simple. Income is the total amount of money you have coming in, and expenses is the money you spend on anything. Net income is when you subtract the expenses from the total income. Next, please. I just mentioned about control. You have to control your spending. You have to identify waste, and you have to make informed decisions if you want to be successful at budgeting. Financial goals, this differs depending on the person and the individual as far as where you set priorities, but I'm gonna cover a little bit more later that this category is important if you plan on retiring. I'm telling you now, there is no way you can think of retirement if you don't consider some of those categories are up there. I'm gonna cover a little bit more on how that ties into the budget. Next, please. Financial information, seminars, or let's say how we just intermingle on a daily basis as far as us talking about finances. Believe it or not, I was pretty surprised when I saw that there is only 14 schools, not schools. Is that right? Let me see. 14 states, I'm saying 14 schools in that slide. It's actually estimated 14 states require some kind of class in order for you to graduate from high school that's in the arena of finances. Other ways we find out about financial information is parents, friends, and advisors, books, videos, internet, classes, and workshops. And if you keep in mind how often that occurs, it's not that often. Another 2 major things that you need to be concerned with as far as a budget is that you have to know the difference between a want and a need. And because of emotions, we normally purchase what we feel based on not purchasing what we actually need. I give you an example. I'm no different than anybody else. If you really want to know the truth, the main reason why I went back to work, I didn't have to work after I retired. The main reason why I went back to work is because I started seeing things I wanted, and you can't see things you want and not be working. So keep that in mind, because this is a very important part of the presentation, is you have to stick to your needs and your wants. Needs is necessary to live and function. A want is to improve your quality of life. Next, please. I'm going to deal with this number a little bit later, but it's April 2021 through April 2022, 71 million people separated from their job, meaning they resigned. The reason why I'm pointing this out is I don't think there's nobody that's sitting in here, whether you like the job or not, that you have had second thoughts about that job. And if you didn't have bills, you would leave that job. And basically what's happening now, that's called a great resignation, is the term they're using for all these people that are leaving their jobs. Also, what you have now is the quiet resignation, where they're saying younger people are only doing the minimum work, but they're just working to wait to find the next job. And the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because if you don't budget correctly, it limits your choices and decisions on where you can go and what you can do. So you have to make sure you find a way to get your budget under control. Next, please. I'm putting these numbers up here because, again, you can't deal with a budget unless you consider this information. Just a quickie here on the first one, car loan, interest rate. You got new and used car. I know you know of people, and you may have done it yourself. I've done it, where you don't even have a clue to what the rate is, and you go in, you see this nice car, it looks good, and you want to get in and be riding by the next morning. And so you basically don't know if they charge you an appropriate rate. So if you look, or if you check it out before you go to get a car, you can save yourself a lot of money by at least knowing what the rate is. And as Latron has mentioned, it has something to do with your credit. But I'm telling you, I have a situation with a bank that I was dealing with that was charging me a higher rate than what my credit score was, because I've never had a low credit score. I mean, I've almost been maxed out on credit scores. And it made me ask the bank. I actually went to the bank and said, how can you give me a rate that you are giving me with this credit score I have? And they did not have a justifiable reason. And my only point on this is you need to go somewhere else when somebody gives you a rate, because people are not necessarily giving you the lowest rate. I don't care how long you've been with them, because this particular bank, I had been with for over 15 years, and I could not get a home loan with a decent rate, and I could not get a car loan with a decent rate, and my score was almost 850. So you have to make sure you're shopping with the right people. Emergency fund, what I will say on this that's important, and I'm gonna cover a little bit more later, is that the recommendation is that you should have 8 to 12 months of your monthly income, kind of like for if something would go down. Matter of fact, one time when I was just jumping around with jobs, I was trying to find the next one. It took me about 14 months, but some of the factors is that I said it was a certain thing that I was looking for. And on interest rates, Rosalind's already covered this. You got to make sure, is the 30-year best for you or 15? A realtor can't help determine that. It's based on your credit and your finances on how you determine how much money you're going to spend as far as that's concerned. Next slide, please. Cash flow, it's the same thing as budget. Here's an example here of monthly income. Let's say, for example, you are making $3,000 and the expenses is $2,700. The net income obviously is $300. Now, this is really, to me, a perfect real life situation example. But what I want you to see here, there is not much you can do with $300 left. You follow what I'm saying? So believe it or not, I was in a situation where I didn't have nothing left. I was borrowing money to try to pay what I did have because I had abused my situation. Next slide, please. Income, expenses, and net income. Were you able to get up that slide that she was trying to send? That's the one I'd like to have up now, please. While he's getting that slide to come up, what you can do is Google budget templates. They have some real nice ones online. Some of them may look complex, but believe me, they're not. What it is that I found is what some people are doing is the one you see that has the most lines on it is the one that's probably more practical to your situation. But if you're not used to seeing budgets, you'll think that it's something just complicated and confusing, and really it's not. It's just where they probably have a more realistic view of what a budget looks like. Pass. Please. What I'm handing out is an example. All right, he has it up now. Focus on the one for right now for me, please, of the one that's up on the screen. And I'm going to show you the difference in between the one that's on the screen and the one we actually have posted up on the screen. Now, the one you see up on the screen is actually one I made up, And I did it on purpose to show you how simple it is, because most people think it's complicated. Basically, all you're doing is you have how many ever lines of income you have coming in. If you have 2 jobs or 3 jobs, then you list each income that you have and you put the total. The next section is expenses, and it's whatever expenses you have. So you list every expense so you can know how much money you are spending. Now, something that people don't realize, I think that's important. Most people think every month you got to keep up with every single line. That's not necessarily the case. You do have to keep up with major lines like your mortgage, or if you're in an apartment, car payments, those kind of things, obviously. But most people have those things, like taking out of a check in some cases. But what I don't want you to do is kind of like get the impression that this is so complicated. So again, you put the amount that you have coming in as far as your income, you list whatever your expenses are, and then you subtract that from your income, and that's what your net income is. Now, what I want you to do for me, please, is take a look at that one that's less busy, the one that I passed out. That is another example, but that's a more true depiction because it actually has some figures in there to show you where your money is going. So if you look at the one that's up on the screen and look at that one, you kind of like see where that one is more realistic, that has the numbers, because it's listed more items of what you actually spend money on. The next one is the one that looks really busy. That's 2.5 pages. Let me tell you something now, and that's the real deal. All it is doing is just showing what the person is spending. And what it is, it's a personal thing. So, I mean, Minister Don, she might have 30 items. Pastor might have 40. Somebody else might have 150. It's all about where you're spending your money. That's all it is. That's for each individual. And if you look at the one that's real busy, like I said, it's listing credit cards, everything. It's not leaving out everything. I mean, leaving out anything. And like I said, you might think that this is a lot of work to begin with, but let me tell you something that changed my way of a budget. I didn't just pick it up and go, I'm gonna do a smart thing. I'm no different than anybody else sitting out here. What happened to me is after I retired from the first job and I went back to work, I had the experience of working for a company that was sending me all over the place. I worked one job where I had 1,400 places to go throughout the United States. And what happened is I said to myself, hold on a minute. I am making a big sacrifice. I don't have what you call a work-life balance, but some of the things that I was checking for these companies all had something to do with a budget in part. And then something clicked with me to say, hold on a minute. You are traveling all over the United States, flying all over the place. And you mean to tell me you can't take a paper like this and figure out what's going on with your own finances? And let me tell you, my life changed and turned around when I just did a little simple thing, like figure out how much money I got coming in and how much money I'm spending. And you set goals, and that's how you eventually get to the next level. Now, let me say this one thing. I don't mind sharing this with you as far as it being personal. Let me tell you something right now, ladies and gentlemen. If you think there's a fast way, if you create debt that you're going to get out of it in a hurry, let me tell you, I ate a whole bunch of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I stopped buying everything to get myself out of debt to where I could have money. It's no easy way once you do that. What I was doing is I was paying as much sometimes as $800 and $900 on credit cards. Because the way you do it is that what you do when you get your money is that first you start paying everybody you owe. Then Johnny, Susie, and Betty can't come to you and say, I know you got money. Can you loan me $600 today? I'm like, what I need for you to do is give me some so I can pay off some of this debt I got. So next slide, please. I'm not gonna go too far with this. I will tell you this, something that I think not a few people sell themselves short on. When you're doing a budget, I'm gonna tell you the reason why these things here are almost impossible to focus on. Most of your money is going into the expenses that you're trying to pay down. And once you get through with the expenses, there's no way you have money left for self-investment, emergency funds, 401k, and your actual retirement. You see what I'm saying? That most people are not there. It took me a long while, because what I was interested in is, if I paid, especially them wants off that I made, where you buy a vehicle, you bought a vehicle, you know you did not need the class of vehicle that you bought or whatever it is that you buy, because most of us, because of emotions, matter of fact, I do it sometimes now, where you go to the store and just because of the emotion, you buy something. Don't get with the women where you go buy shoes, you take them back, or you go to buy dresses or whatever it is. I remember one time I took my mother shopping. She came home with a carload of stuff. I think it was 3 or 4 days, she took half of it back. So, you know, you kind of like got to balance those things out. Now, the one thing I am going to mention that I think is probably one of the most important things that I would tell you, just from a personal experience and being able to retire as early as what I did, is the one thing I didn't understand to include at retirement, but I kind of like had my act halfway together, so it saved me. If you make $30,000 a year, or let's say you make $40,000, and somebody may have to take out the calculator for me, but let's say, a hypothetical, because it can be done, you retire making an average of $40,000 a year. So that means, let's say you live 10 years, that means you got to come up with $400,000 from somewhere. Is that math right? $40,000, if that's what you make in each year. And if you live for 10 years after you retire, you have to have $400,000 coming from somewhere. Now, the question I have, it ain't many people have $400,000 saved up when they retire. Now, think of this, though. A lot of people, now nobody knows when the day is coming for when you're going to check out of here, but I retired in 1993. So how much money do you think I would need if I'm still trying to sustain the current life that I have? And if you don't get anything else I'm saying today about a budget is pretty simple. You got your income, you got your expenses, and you have your net income. Once you subtract that, then that's the money left, and you have your personal goals as far as your savings and whatever it is that you want to do in life. But I'm going to tell you, I quit 2 jobs because I got sick and tired of the demand that they had as far as the number of hours that you're working. And I'm quite sure it's somebody sitting in here right now that's saying, man, you don't know, if I could leave on tomorrow, I would be gone. I know I'm right about that. And so it makes you go, what are you going to do about that? If you really want to leave that job, how are you setting yourself up to get out of the workforce period? The workforce period. Is there any questions?
Love you, Pastor. Good afternoon to everyone. I do want to make a quick comment. First, I want to say great workshop today. Great information, and I really appreciate you guys sharing. I just wanted to also add to Greg about what you're saying about budgeting and also getting out of debt and all of that. What helped me with my debt was that we all know the debt that we have. And but for me, writing it down, all the debt down on a piece of paper, really made it reality for me to see it on paper. And so what I did was I wrote all my debt down, and I started from the smallest to the largest, and I put it on my refrigerator because I knew that would be the one place that I would go to every day that I had to see that debt. And I got tired of seeing that debt. And so what helped me was every month I took one of those pieces of debt and I paid it off each month until I got to the largest one that was left. And so I wanted to share that to kind of see, if that might help someone, once you write it down, because, we have it in our head and we know how much we owe, but sometimes until we see things visually, they don't really become a reality as much until we see it. And so writing it down can kind of help you get into that direction of getting rid of your debt.
Does going into your 401k to borrow and help them pay down your debt help you, or does that hurt you?
Well, one, I mean, I'm not a 401k guy, but I'm gonna tell you this here based on me knowing about me going in, is that one, if you do it, I'm sorry, if you do it, depending on the time frame, there's a huge penalty for going into it. And even when you go into it, I'm glad you brought that question up because I didn't mention.
There's no penalty. There's
Right.
a penalty.
Right. Right. And another thing I was going to add is that blew me away. I know they were going to tax me, but when you start going into that money that you thought you had saved, it's almost like a 20% rate of that you have to pay in taxes. So when I said that 400,000, you can automatically almost take 20% from that. And I call a tax guy because let me tell you now, I was trying to find a way to get away from Uncle Sam. And he basically told me that there's not too much you're going to do as far as the taxes that they take on that. So I'm glad you brought that question up just for the fact of that even when you think you have a reasonable amount of money saved up, that tax guy is coming up for you. Matter of fact, last time I just said I wanted a small amount. They said, you want this amount? Well, let me tell you this, 20% is coming off, so how much do you really need? So I had to up the amount to actually get the total amount that I wanted to get from it.
Right. A loan is different. And a loan is different in the way that you borrow it while you're still on the job, and you pay it back while you're still on the job, and you pay it back at a lower percentage rate. And you pay while you're paying it back at a lower percentage rate, but you're paying it back to yourself. And there's no penalties to withdraw, and they don't tax it. So that's what I'm saying. Some people say it's okay to borrow some while you're still working and you're able to still work and pay it back. But I just want to know, like in the long run, does it hurt or help you? Because it's your money and you're paying it back.
To be honest with you, I'm not able with the knowledge I have on that subject to answer the question, and obviously would not want to steer you wrong on that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Can I speak to that for a second?
Sure.
Because I've experienced it.
Sure.
So as long as you pay that money back at that interest rate, which it goes back to you,
Right.
you're basically borrowing your own money, okay? As long as you're paying yourself back and you don't leave that job,
Right.
then it won't hurt you, okay? I would rather borrow my own money than go pay somebody else that money, okay? So you have to make sure you also take time, make sure you're not leaving that job at any time soon to where you can pay that money back, because I think the max on most plans like that is you can only finance it for 5 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so make sure that you don't get fired, you don't, and they'll have whatever you have in your 401k, you can only, there's only a percentage that you can take out of it, and they'll give you that percentage. But if you leave that job for some reason, then Uncle Sam, unless you're making the payments, you make arrangements where you can still make the payments on it. If you take it as a hit, then you got to go back and pay taxes on the original amount. So think long, think hard about it, because if anything could happen.
Right.
Just like with anything else out here, life is a gamble,
Right.
basically.
Right.
but in my experience, that's what I've had, I've done it before when I was working, and it worked out for me. And I think, to me, in my personal opinion, I think it's a great thing.
Thank you.
The only thing I will add is a last comment, since you brought that up. And like I said, I'm not going to address the part about whether or not you borrow from that. But one of the things I will bring up that I didn't say, because you don't have so much time in a first session to say something about budgeting, because there's a little bit more to it than I have the time for at this current time. But one of the things I'd like to also bring up that I'm quite sure everybody's experienced, as soon as you think you are trying to save some money, there are some real emergency situations that come up that I don't care if you saved up 600, I don't care if you saved up 4,000, it's some hitters that you go, I have no other choice but to go into this money. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is that one of the major causes of bankruptcy is medical conditions of somebody. So even if you had the amount of money accumulated that you wanted to, there's something. But what I will say from a decimal perspective, all you can do is do your best. And because of the lack of information and education on finances, we don't stick to a plan of how to save money and keep it saved. Because I had that problem also at a very early age, where I was saving, I get like 700 in the credit union, get 800, and then something comes up and you go in there and take 500 out. Let me tell you, you can't move ahead doing that.
My question is, what if the company leaves you? You don't leave the company, but they leave you, and you've borrowed money from this 401k.
You still, through your plan, which most companies, they have a plan that's either with Merrill Lynch, Fidelity, somebody's managing their 401k. So you can set up between you and that 401k manager, administrator, or what you want to call it. You can set up a payment plan with them to where they'll send you information saying, okay, how you want to do this? You want to still make these payments, or you just want to take it as a tax hit? Because they'll send you an invoice saying this is your payment still. So you're still responsible for it. But if you choose not to pay it, then you're going to take that hit, and then it's going to call, the IRS going to call. They're going to send you a bill next.
Right, because I know in North Carolina, one of the administrators, or governors, I should say, reduced the amount of benefits you can draw, unemployment benefits you can get each week. So if you're not in a position where you have saved or have an emergency fund, you may not have the money to make that payment. So you may have to take it as a hit. So I guess that goes back to what you were saying about really analyze and be careful when deciding to borrow from the 401k. So does anybody else have any questions? I wanted to open the floor back up for, Marche and Latron and Greg, for anybody here to ask any questions that you may have. Because I know we are a little bit over time, but if you have some questions.
I had one thing that came to my mind when we were talking about paying additional against your principal to pay off your loan earlier and pay less interest. Make sure when you talk to whoever, let's say if your payment is $500 a month, but you want to pay an extra $200 a month down on your principal, you have to let whoever you're talking to or whatever know that you're paying that extra $200 on your principal. Otherwise, they'll count it towards the interest payment. And I think some of them are pretty good about understanding that, hey, obviously this extra payment is going towards your principal, but there's a lot of lenders that kind of shady, and they'll apply that $200 to your interest, and then you think you're paying stuff off early, but you're not, right? So you have to be explicit, and if you're talking to somebody on the phone, those calls are recorded. So yeah.
Can you, in the event that you thought you were paying down the principal and they were applying that money to interest, is there any way that can be fixed?
It'll be hard unless you got a good attorney. Yes, next question.
And I was following up with that question. Can you do like a separate check or a separate way to pay it? That
Yeah,
says,
if you pay with a, let's say, a separate check,
or
and you
money
have,
order?
yeah, and you have listed on there for principal,
Uh-huh.
only, or something
Uh-huh.
like that, where you can have it documented. Um, it's just like a lot of people, they'll just make an additional payment on top of their normal payment,
Right.
and they think, okay, well, it'll just automatically be applied, but in some cases it won't.
Right.
So you just have to be explicit, especially when you're paying extra. Yeah. Question. Another question.
So a good way to increase your credit is to get like a major credit card and just keep the line open?
Yeah. Do you have any credit cards now?
No.
Okay, so you don't get any of that 30%. So and I was talking to somebody about this the other day. So if you don't have any credit cards and you want to increase your credit score 50 to 100 points, get a credit card, and you'll see your score bump right up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
1 point. Oh, go ahead.
I have one question to add to Tarsha's question. When you're going through the home buying process, would you advise going to get a credit card?
No.
Okay.
I would advise, if you're going through the home buying process, don't do anything that's going to affect your credit, like hard pull or anything like that.
What I handed to you were two documents. One was the U.S. Legal Survivor's Guide to a Death in the Family, written by attorney Neil Walker, and estate planning questionnaire for you to go through. You don't have to, with the questionnaire, this is for you. And I would suggest that you hold on to it once you fill it out, just to put it with your will so that people can see everything you have, because your will won't have this information in it. Okay. Any more questions about estate planning? I will be setting up some sessions for people who are interested in getting their wills done for a nominal fee.
And I would advise anybody, guys, if you do not have a will, if you do not have powers of attorney, financial power of attorney, medical power of attorney, please, please, please get with Marche, because this stuff, it does matter. Maybe she can point you in the direction of what you need to do. Well, not maybe, I know she can point you in the direction of what you need to do, but please do not put off dealing with this information. It's very important that you have these things in place, because none of us know the time nor the day that we're going to leave. None of us know when we're going to leave, but you have to have those things put in order, because if you don't, I know, and Marche, please correct me if I'm wrong, in the state of North Carolina, if you do not have an administrator, the court will appoint one for you. And they may not divide up your assets or give your assets out, or distribute is the word I'm looking for, distribute your assets in a way that you would have preferred. But had we taken the time to get our estate business in order, we can avoid a lot of that stuff. And if you have family members that you don't know, maybe your daddy was a Rolling Stone, or, mama was creeping, find out about these people. Find out about siblings that you may not know exist, because guess what? They have, depending on the state, they have rights. And you can't do anything without their signature and without their approval. So please, I'm telling you, I was one that would kind of shy away from thinking about what happens after I die or what have you. But just some of the things that have happened in the last couple of months have made me revisit that. Don't not do this, because you really leave your family members in a sticky situation when you haven't prepared for your untimely death, be it, or your death. So please, please, please get with Marche. make sure you've got this stuff laid out. No, it's not a fun topic, but it makes life so much easier for the survivors, the people that you leave behind. So please understand the importance of having a will, having those powers of attorney in place so that you can alleviate a lot of the headaches that come when you don't have it. You know, because if there are no survivors, then the stuff is sheets to the state, depending on the state. It goes to the state.
I kind of know this though, but I just wanted to ask, what if you only have, like, I only have one child, so I'm in my mind, everything I have is hers when I die. But tell me the importance of me having a will anyways.
The importance of her having a will is in case somebody comes up and says it's not yours. Okay, and as well as somebody saying, well, that was my mama too, or she promised me this, or she owes me that type of thing.
And I guess that would also entail, like, you know, how you want your remains taken care of and all that stuff, how that, yeah. Because I told my family, and you have it here, you guys hear it here, I don't want to be cremated, just in case I wake up and need something to come back to. So we're going to leave it at that.
Well, and let me add to that too, please, in your will, specify your choice of burial preparation. If you are going to be cremated, you need to specify who is responsible for your burial arrangements. You know, if you're having a funeral, specify in that will who's going to be in charge of your funeral arrangements, because believe me, you guys, it makes a difference. They scrutinize, like I said, North Carolina is a little bit different. They scrutinize everything, you know, so make sure you got your business straight down to the wording, because they are looking at every T crossed and every I dotted.
Cool. All right, so yeah, so this is what we are all about, being able to give information to the community. We appreciate you guys. Can we give a round of applause to all the speakers? And also everybody that chimed in and listened. If you have any questions, we'll be around to answer any questions. Anybody have any questions online, definitely reach out. Just want to give a shout out to our director, Ms. Dawn Johnson, for all she does with the Center Baptist Church Economic Development Division, and also give a shout out to Pastor Crawford for his vision and making this possible. And I believe we have a word from our director. Yes, we're going to have our director come up and give you guys the email address for the Center Baptist Church 187, nope. Yeah, I apologize, but I did not come up here prepared to give, but we'll make sure that everybody has that information. And if our director doesn't have anything to say, we will adjourn. Pastor, would you like to come up and give some remarks?
While Latron is reading that text, and he's going to give the email as soon as I pray, come on and give everybody a hand once again. Thank all of you for coming. Thank all of you that are watching Facebook Live and YouTube. Also, good time to go ahead and put out a commercial. Tomorrow is Friends and Family Day, so we look forward to all that can come and share with us on tomorrow. 9 o'clock is Sunday school, 10 o'clock is worship service, and we look forward to everybody that can come on out to be here with us at Center Baptist Church, located at 3301 South New Hope Road. If you need more information, of course, our website is cbcgnc.org. So we're thankful for that. And that's just, of course, the letters for Center Baptist Church, Gastonia, North Carolina. Easy to remember. All right, listen, we're going to get ready to go. I'm thankful for all the presenters on today. And we look forward to doing this, I believe, each month. Is that right? So you look forward to watching our website to see what's going on. The best way to watch our website is go right to the newsletter and you see everything that's going on for that month. So we really appreciate it. Right before I close us out in prayer, Latron's going to come and give that information.
All right, so we were able to find the email address. So if you have any questions about any of the topics or would like to, just get general information about meetings and what we're going to be doing next, the email address is CBCEDEV, and that stands for Center Baptist Church Economic Development. So that's CBCE. D is in Delta, E, V is in Victor, at gmail.com. CBCEDEV at gmail.com. Thank you.
Latron, there was one question in the chat. I apologize that I fell off my job. One question in the chat said, I paid off my credit cards. I don't care to enter into that bondage again. Is that good or bad?
Well, it just depends. There's a lot of school of thought. You can live off the radar. We live in a nation of debt, and where you are rewarded for getting into debt, and that's just the nation of this society. However, there are some philosophies that believe in going out of debt, and if you decide to pay off all your credit cards, that's fine. Just know that it's going to affect the score that's used to evaluate you in this society. But so it could be good or bad, just depending on how you look at it. I think I've shared this story. I met with this couple, me and my wife, and they were with the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace. And, they told me when we met with them for credit counseling or budgeting, they told us that they had a terrible credit score. They couldn't afford to rent an apartment. And so me and my wife were looking at each other like, okay, why are we here with you if you can't, well, I said afford, they can't qualify to rent an apartment. And they told us we can buy the building, but we can't qualify to rent the apartment. So they were wealthy. They had no credit card debt. They were basically debt free. Their credit score was probably in the low 400s because they didn't subscribe to the credit environment that we're in today. It depends on if you want to use the system, you can use the system to become very wealthy. A lot of people have done it. If you don't watch how you're using your credit, you could harm yourself. But just something to keep in mind, paying off your credit cards to get out of debt, it may make it harder for you to do other things. But if you're looking to quote unquote live off the grid and have some sense of financial peace, then I would advise you to check out Dave Ramsey's programs because he goes through various things, talking about emergency funds and things like that. So it's kind of a yes and no, but it just depends on where you're at.
And one other question. So as many of you know, we're coming into more of a cashless society. Mm-hmm. Would that be beneficial to take on that principle of just utilizing cash? Because a lot of places won't even take cash now. Mm-hmm. You have to have a card. So where do you go from that perspective when you're dealing with a lot of merchants that no longer accept cash? And I don't know if many of you have gone into some stores and they're like, well, we can't give you change back. Then I give you, and then my response to them is then I pay you less. Because if you can't give me change, then you get less money.
Yeah. And if you still want to get rid of your credit cards, again, you're basically opting out of the mainstream credit environment that we're in. But yeah, you're right. A lot of establishments will not take cash, but but they will take debit cards, right? So you're pretty much, because debit card is basically cash, right? So or a prepaid card or something like that. That's how you can not have credit cards if that's what you want to do and still have the ability to make electronic payments. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again. Let us go ahead and pray. Father, we thank you for this information that has been shared with our community. A church and a community should be in the community. And we're thankful that we have men and women that can go ahead and share valuable information that can help us after the benediction. So Lord, bless them and bless those that will be coming in the future, that we may be able to be blessed to be a blessing to someone else. This is our humble prayer, and it is in Jesus' name that we do pray. And as God's children, we said, amen.